Selamat siang Bapak Ibu semua, selamat datang di House of Piano. Perkenalkan saya Adrian dari House of Piano dan terima kasih telah datang pada siang hari ini di Steinway Enrichment Session bersama seorang Steinway artis bernama Moritz Ernst. Dan sebelum kita mulai acaranya, izinkan saya untuk memperkenalkan House of Piano terlebih dahulu. Jadi House of Piano adalah showroom alat musik akustik terbaik di Indonesia yang berlokasi di Dharma Wangsa Square, Jakarta Selatan, di mana kami menjual beberapa brand dari akustik piano. Dari ada Steinway & Sons, Boston, Essex, kemudian ada Petrov, ada Kaiserberg, Perifer, dan Rittmuller, serta ada beberapa alat musik lainnya seperti digital piano, string instrumen, gitar, dan alat musik orkestra. Dan di bulan depan kami juga akan membuka kembali Steinway Gallery Jakarta di Central Park, di mana showroom kami akan menjadi 4 lantai dan kapasitas dining hall akan menjadi 120 seat. Untuk informasi lebih lanjut mengenai acara dan juga produk, silakan menghubungi tim kami yang ada di tempat ini, serta jangan lupa mengikuti Instagram kami di House of Piano Jakarta dan @steinway.indonesia untuk informasi mengenai acara selanjutnya. Dan selanjutnya saya akan menyerahkan kepada moderator acara kita pada hari ini. Mari kita sambut Bapak Harimada Kusuma.
Pagi menjelang siang ya, hampir siang sebetulnya ya. Sebetulnya kita kan janjian jam 11 ya tadi ya. Cuma karena satu dan lain hal agak sedikit siang mulainya. Nah, pada hari ini kita kedatangan seorang Steinway artist, Moritz Ernst dari Jerman, yang akan berbagi insight ya, pengalaman lebih sebagai seorang pianis sebetulnya ya, daripada seorang guru. Nah, beliau bilang sendiri kepada saya itu lebih praktikal, saya lebih membagi pengalaman saya secara praktikal, membagi pengalaman sebagai seorang pianis. Ya, jadi mungkin sisi-sisi pedagogi itu akan lebih dijabarkan secara praktikal gitu ya. Ya, nanti yang itulah pesan-pesan beliau tadi katanya gitu. Nah, siapakah Moritz Ernst ini? Saya rasa mungkin beberapa di antara kita pernah ingat beliau pernah datang ke Indonesia katanya sekitar 8 tahun yang silam ya. Jadi mungkin Anda yang waktu itu mungkin masih terlalu kecil ya. Mungkin belum pernah mengikuti masterclass beliau atau konser beliau, tapi beliau pernah datang ke Indonesia beberapa tahun sebelum Covid katanya gitu. Saya juga kurang ingat. Nah, tapi beliau cerita tadi gitu. Nah, jadi inilah pengalaman beliau kedua di Indonesia, di mana beliau itu adalah seorang concert pianist yang sangat-sangat sibuk, sangat-sangat banyak jadwal performance termasuk di Indonesia pada hari ini, pada kali ini. Namun beliau juga menyempatkan diri untuk memberikan beberapa masterclass ya, dan beberapa dari kita telah mengikuti masterclassnya kemarin. Dan juga setelah acara ini juga beliau ada jadwal untuk recital nanti malam gitu ya. Jadi sangat senang sekali bahwa beliau dapat menyempatkan dirinya untuk berbagi pengalaman tidak hanya melalui musik tapi juga melalui diskusi bersama kita hari ini. Nah, sedikit bio singkat, beliau lahir tahun 1986 di Jerman ya. Memulai pendidikan musiknya itu pada usia yang belia ya, jadi bahkan lulus SMA-nya dan masuk perguruan tinggi musiknya pun dalam usia yang relatif lebih muda daripada teman-teman seangkatannya ya. Beliau belajar dengan beberapa profesor dan juga telah membuat recording ya, mostly karya-karya yang kita jarang dengar. Nah ya, nanti bisa dicek di bio datanya. Kebetulan juga komposer-komposer seperti Victor Ullmann seperti itu ya, itu kan jarang tuh diperdengarkan di Indonesia. Kebetulan saya dulu pernah main songsnya dari Victor Ullmann. Jadi ketika saya baca itu, oh I know gitu, sok tahu gitu langsung ya gitu, karena pernah main karyanya gitu ya. Nah tapi menarik bahwa oh iya ya, komposer-komposer itu ada juga loh yang bikin karya-karya yang tidak kalah menarik dengan komposer-komposer seperti Chopin, Schumann ya, Hummel contohnya ya, jarang sekali diperdengarkan di sini. Padahal Hummel itulah yang menginspirasi Chopin contohnya ya. Chopin Piano Concerto itu mostly seperti etude-etudenya Hummel. Nah ya, kalau kita tahu, oh Hummel tuh kayak apa sih? Siapa sih gitu? Kok jarang di sini diperdengarkan? Nah, coba salah satu recording beliau itu menampilkan karya-karya tersebut. Nah, itu bisa menjadi sumber inspirasi juga bahwa di balik ketenaran komposer-komposer besar ada juga komposer-komposer inti yang mungkin tidak terlalu terdengar namanya, tapi sangat berpengaruh di perkembangan musik klasik di dunia. Nah, Moritz Ernst itu juga mengabadikan karya-karya komposer tersebut melalui rekaman-rekamannya. It's worth listen to, ya. Lalu saya tadi sempat berkenalan dan mengobrol sedikit dengan Bapak Moritz Ernst yang sangat-sangat komunikatif, ya, dan saya rasa acara ini akan menjadi sesi yang sangat menarik karena mainly kita akan membahas sedikit banyak mengenai juga harpsichord playing, ya, yang mungkin yang kemarin sempat mengikuti masterclass-nya, beliau juga memberikan masterclass di harpsichord dan memberikan konser juga di atas harpsichord kemarin malam. Nah, uniknya kalau harpsichord itu kan kita korelasinya itu dengan karya-karya zaman barok, ya, karena memang harpsichord itu instrumen yang menjadi populer di zaman itu, ya, yang tadinya hanya menjadi basso continuo sampai juga menjadi solo instrumen. Namun banyak juga ternyata komposer-komposer modern yang menulis karya itu khusus untuk harpsichord. Dan kemarin juga ditampilkan oleh Pak Moritz Ernst ini, ya. Gitu. Nah, nanti kita akan berbincang-bincang. Kenapa sih penting untuk mengetahui itu semua? Kenapa harpsichord itu penting gitu? Kenapa harpsichord itu mempengaruhi juga teknik bagaimana kita bermain piano pada saat ini gitu, ya. Oke, nah kita akan coba bincang-bincang santai dengan Bapak Moritz Ernst. So, I would like to invite Moritz Ernst to the stage to have a discussion with us. Please welcome.
A pleasure to be here and looking forward to our talk.
Yes, please have a seat.
Thanks a lot.
So, I just told them that this is your second time being in Indonesia.
That's true.
That's true.
The first time was quite a long time ago. I'm not sure, about 8 years, something like that. So it's a treat to be back.
Really? Yes. And how does it feel to be here, to perform in Indonesia and to perform for an Indonesian audience and to give master classes to Indonesian students?
Well, the main concert will be tonight, so let's see how the concerts in here are going to work out. But I just have a very good feeling about it, especially since the master classes already have been huge fun, I hope also for the students. And some highly talented and great students here, which no surprise for me, but still very happy to realize that my expectations were somewhat met.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we are also very happy to have you here and also to have you share your insight and knowledge with all of us in Indonesia.
At least I'm trying my best to do so.
Great. Okay. And if we read your profile, we could also read that you are also, beside a pianist, you are also a harpsichordist. Those are two different instruments, right?
Very different, but in a way also quite similar, of course. Very obviously, with the harpsichord having the same sort of key arrangement as the piano has. Okay, it has two manuals, so a bit more keys to choose from. But yes, it's quite different instruments also in the way the sound is produced. But let's not forget, without the harpsichord, our today's piano wouldn't be possible.
Yes, that's true. But even though harpsichord is a more historical instrument, it is still played until today widely. Yeah, I have actually attended a master class long time ago. I remember a harpsichord player from Europe. I actually forget from which country, but I remember what she said to me. Do you? I asked her a question. Do you play the piano? No, I don't play the piano. I am a harpsichordist. But this is very interesting for me because you play both of the instruments. How does it affect your, I don't know, maybe your daily practice? Do you have to switch the technique and your mindset while you play on the harpsichord and the piano? What are the differences and how does it affect each other?
That's a huge field. So, I mean, the harpsichord has a very specific sound world. It's an own world compared to the piano. The piano has that voluminous, rich sound. The harpsichord, it's just that very, very clear, crystalline sort of sound, and basically more of a guitar actually than of a piano sound-wise. So I hope guitarists won't shoot me, but I could say it's a mechanized guitar in a way. Basically, that's what it is. So it's a little sort of plectrum plucking the strings. So that's how the sound is produced. Whereas on the piano, as we all know, it's just a hammer hitting the strings. So this is already a huge difference between these instruments. And this also causes a very different technical approach. So I totally understand many harpsichordists saying that they don't play the piano. However, I think now with the wide acceptance of the so-called historically informed performance, there are many harpsichordists who also play the fortepiano. And there we are on a much more similar sort of technique compared to the modern piano. So I think it's coming a little bit. But I agree totally that playing the harpsichord is very special because not only are the keys are narrower than on the piano, so it's I don't know how much it's actually in millimeters, but it feels like a world, honestly. And also the sort of touch you have, so when you press the key of a harpsichord, let's say first millimeter, nothing happens. Then suddenly you get a ding, that's when the plectrum plucks the string, and then again it falls into nothing. Whereas on a piano, that's actually much more gradually. So there is an even touch. So you push the key down, and it moves at a constant pace, even after the hammer has actually hit the string. You know, the touch remains the same, and there is no such thing as a sudden action like on the harpsichord. Again, it's clear because once the plectrum has plucked the string, what can happen anymore? But still, this is a huge difference when playing on these instruments.
Yeah. So it requires also different technique then.
Yes, it does. So many of the things you do on the piano, especially like working with your body, you know, like having the weight of the arm from your shoulders coming or whatsoever, all that sort of pianist technique is simply useless on a harpsichord. So on a harpsichord, it's really only about manipulating the key down a couple of millimeters, and that's it. So and it's a great thing actually. What I really like about the harpsichord is you don't need any power or force at all, you know. It's just, you know, make the key move and that's it. So bling, and there it is.
So you only use your finger actually without
Yes,
your arm.
yes, that's exactly. So basically you play the harpsichord a lot just from your fingers. And I think it's a wonderful tactile experience, honestly, to press the key and feel the point now it's going to plug the string, and then you press further, and ding, there is a sound. So I really like that tactile moment of it.
This is amazing because if I may share my own experience, it's very interesting because a couple of years ago I had a performance where I had to play on the harpsichord. Actually, for the first time in a performance, because of course, at the conservatory, I studied also some baroque music on the harpsichord. But then I got so nervous because I had to play with the orchestra, and then I played it was a Handel piece, and I played as if I played on a Steinway model D, you know, like with the touch and everything, and nothing happened, you know, like
No, and if you are unlucky, even the opposite of what you want to happen is going to happen. So forget about all that sort of what you know, all that stuff what we often tell pianists, get into the keys, and how you call it, all that. Forget about it. It's useless there. It's just, you know, you need that feeling for when is the plectrum going to plug the string. And once then you need a very precise movement. That's a difficulty, actually. That sort of quick and precise movement, ping, and that's it. And then immediately after that, relax the hand again, because there is no sense about getting deep into the keyboard and all that, and you know, it doesn't do anything to the sound.
Exactly, that was my experience, and I got used to it after 3 days of rehearsing. And then I just found out that actually, if I do less, I will get more from the harpsichord.
Exactly. So the less you do, the better the result is. In many ways, that also applies to piano playing, actually. But in that sense, in that sort of technical sense, totally right. And it's even better, you know. Otherwise, you will suddenly hear the action of the harpsichord. If you press too much, it's now a bit difficult to explain, but the way then those, what's the English word for it? In German we call it the Springer. I think that's Springers.
Yes.
They will hit a wooden piece, which makes that they don't jump out of the instrument. So if you just press too much, you get lots of mechanical noises of the keyboard and of those springers hitting that wooden bar and so on, even if there is felt on it. You know, you get lots of these noises which sound quite awful. And even on a harpsichord, the way how you really press the key, at what pace, and you know, all that also makes a difference in sound. And you know, when playing with too much power, even on a harpsichord, the sound might turn a little bit strange sometimes. So it might not be as obvious as when you mistreat a piano. But even on a harpsichord, you can get a strange sound.
Yeah, that mechanical sound.
That mechanical sound, and there is one other thing, of course, and that's, we have to dive a little bit into how the sound develops on a piano and how it develops on a harpsichord. So basically, on a piano is much slower than a harpsichord. So what does that mean? It means once the hammer has hit the string, it takes some time until the full sound is there. You can't measure it in seconds, of course. I mean, it's very, very quick still. But if you see a graph of it, it takes quite some time after the hammer has hit the string until the whole sound is there. And then, once the sound has built up, it stays like forever. Especially on a good instrument, the sound will be sustained for a very long period of time. So if you hit a key on this piano, for the next 10 seconds, easily there will be sound. The harpsichord is exactly the opposite. So from the moment on, the string is plucked by the plectrum. That's the maximum. So it's immediately there and then disappears very quickly. So the graph of a sound from the piano would be like that and then disappearing slowly. On the harpsichord is ding and then immediately disappearing quickly. So that might sound quite like a lot of theory, but in reality it's really a huge difference, because on the harpsichord you have the maximum sound right after hitting the key, whereas on the piano it takes some time to get the sound. So you have, as a performer, you have to give the piano a bit more time to develop the whole sound. So even when playing piano or something like that, some people are often asking me, "What's it with that? The sound which you produce? It really comes out of the piano." Yeah, I think that's about giving the instrument some time, you know. And that was for me one of the things I learned from the harpsichord, because there I suddenly had that direct comparison, and I realized how slow the piano is until the sound is there. So don't get it as a criticism of the piano. It's, you know, it's not quality. I'm not talking quality. I'm just talking about differences, and that's one of the main things I learned from harpsichord for the piano. As surprising it might sound, because that's not the first most obvious reason, but for me that was the most important thing to realize, how long it takes for the piano to build up the sound.
Very interesting. So I think the sound produced by harpsichord is far more direct than the piano. You know, actually I have a list of questions here prepared before, but based on what he's telling us, I think I have built many extra questions in my head, so I don't need this anymore.
Let's try to go ahead.
Yeah, very interesting though. Now, I think first, of course, if we talk about harpsichord, we think immediately about Baroque music, because the music in that period were composed especially for harpsichord, right? Later on, we will discuss about something also interesting. But first, how do we translate the sound concept of the harpsichord from the Baroque music while we playing those music on a modern piano? What do we have to think about? What do we have to imitate, or what do we actually should not try to imitate then?
That's a huge question,
Yes.
and it's quite a wide field. And what I will do is I'm going to offer my opinion on it. Let's be clear, there will be other opinions as well. And I mean, in the end, it's about the art, and
Yes.
art is always something very subjective.
I agree.
So don't try to generalize what I say, because I mean that's my experience, which I made for me. So the experience for others might be very different.
Yes.
So I think one of the mistakes, for me it's a sort of mistake, we often do as pianists, is that we try to imitate the harpsichord. But for the reasons I've just given about how the sound actually is produced and how the sound reacts on these two instruments, it's quite clear we cannot really imitate a harpsichord on a piano. Otherwise, what we know now from that way how the tone is produced, so it's there and then it's disappearing quite quickly, then it makes clear why those Baroque polyphone pieces, mostly polyphone pieces, I mean Baroque era pieces are in most cases polyphone in some ways. So why they always sound that clear and airy on a harpsichord? So it's because the sound disappears quite quickly. So one of the tasks as a pianist is to somehow clear it up, because the piano, the way it is built, tends to make things a bit muddy. So we will need to find a solution how to maintain a clear texture even in polyphone music. I don't think trying to imitate the harpsichord is getting us really far. So where does it go? If you try to imitate the piano, you will end up in that standard sort of non-legato playing, which so many colleagues entertain. I'm a little bit, I don't want to say I'm fed up with it, but you know, I think it's a dead end in a way. So, especially when you play the harpsichord, you are dreaming of being able to have a legato, you know. A lot of time, so I spent studying the harpsichord with a student of Gustav Leonhardt. So, you know, it's that huge tradition. And what he tried to teach me for quite a long time is how to produce something like a legato, a proper legato on a harpsichord. So now imagine you are training and training and training to play Bach on or Handel or whatever on a harpsichord and trying to get a proper legato, because that's because of how the sound is produced on the harpsichord is so difficult. And now go to the piano and just play constant non-legato. For me, that really doesn't make sense. So for me, it's about finding a sort of touch. For me, it's more a matter of touch in order to find a touch which is light enough on the piano but defined, that still allows me to use the whole range of articulations we have. I mean, there is nothing wrong with playing non-legato at some points, you know, but also to be able to use the legato possibilities of the piano, because that's what you can do on a harpsichord as well if you are well trained, and that's what a really great harpsichordist can produce. So why should we refrain from doing so on a piano? You know, that's one of the key questions. The next one is it's also how to release actually the fingers, how to release the case. On a harpsichord, if you are playing, I mean, many pianists tend to play quite sharp staccatos on the piano. Whereas if you try that on a harpsichord, the result will be very percussive. So if you are playing a staccato on a harpsichord, you can do that, but it really is percussive. There are not that many places in the original Baroque repertoire where you can really use that. Later on, for example, a Poulenc harpsichord concerto, Francis Poulenc, something like that. There it is amazing percussive parts, and it really makes sense, and it's wonderful. But do we want that in Baroque music? Mostly not. So also this sort of super staccato sometimes used in Baroque music on the piano, I don't really feel well for it, because after playing the harpsichord I realized how much I really desire to have a nice tone there, and suddenly sitting on the piano and doing everything which I hate on the harpsichord, for me just doesn't feel right. So for me it's about finding individual solutions and using the piano as a piano rather than as trying to make it into a harpsichord. So it's for me more in term of character. So we have that clarity and that light, sometimes that lightness. Although a harpsichord, especially when you have chords in the bass register, can be really powerful and even quite confusing sometimes. Whereas especially in the bass register, a piano can be very, still very clear. A sort of clearness the harpsichord doesn't have, surprisingly. So for me, it's more to get that sort of transparency the harpsichord offers to the piano, rather than trying to imitate techniques pianists think you will do on a harpsichord.
Yeah, this is very interesting because I think that's true because I think many students, especially I mean they are programmed when they play Baroque music to imitate actually the sound of harpsichord, while actually piano is a totally different instrument and you can really imitate harpsichord, but you can understand what's happening on the harpsichord in order to make your choices, right?
That's exactly what
yeah,
I wanted to say with many more words. Yeah.
no, no. I mean that's what I think my thoughts were really confirmed today that it's not about right or wrong, right? Yeah, it's about the choices you make in order to play in a stylistic way based on the sound of the harpsichord.
Of course, we are quite lucky about Baroque music because I might add that the good thing about Baroque music, and that's one of the reasons I think why it often works so well on the piano. At least let's say the more German Baroque, like Handel, Bach, Telemann, whatever, is because it's often not exactly specified if it was written for harpsichord or not. Many pieces were just written for keyboard instrument. So keyboard could mean also a small organ. Not a big organ, but you know the smaller ones like portative or something like that. So if I say, of course, the concept of tone color wasn't developed in the Baroque era, that's totally wrong. But in a way, they were much more flexible about that. So look at Bach. Take the cantatas. Oh, there is. I have a piece for hobo, for singer and orchestra. Oh, don't have a singer. Oh, so no problem. Let's have the soprano replaced by a hobo. You know, and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
So they are quite relaxed about certain colors. You know, tone colors. It's not as specified as it became later, and I think that's also one of the reasons why you can play this music quite well on a piano. So if you can play, for example, wohltemperiertes Klavier or something like that, you could play on a small organ without any problems. You know, and it has probably been done, of course. Then why not play it on the piano? And even if you go in the time before Bach, so I've quite often played, for example, Samuel Scheidt, Tabulatura Nova, which is long before Bach, and Scheidt was the first composer to really write music in the system with 5 lines we know today. So that's why his series of pieces was called Tabulatura Nova. It's Latin for the new way of writing, and it was really to show these 5 lines and of notation we have today. It's not, nobody knows for which instrument it was actually written. It can be played on an organ, it can be played on a portative, but most of the pieces can be played with on a harpsichord or piano as well. So this makes it much easier to translate that music to the piano. And when I said that German tradition, I think it's very difficult to play a proper couplet or something, couplet, on the piano, because this music, however, is so idiomatic for the harpsichord. The way he works with the sound disappearing of the harpsichord, and this constant use of note inégale, which is a good English translation. What would it be? This uneven playing.
Yeah.
It's a very, very specific sort of rubato, exclusively for French harpsichord, Baroque harpsichord music, which is so difficult to be translated to the piano. That I'm really struggling to play Cupra and
Also
something like that on a piano, because that's so idiomatic for the written for the harpsichord. I don't have the feeling it really works well on a piano. So and all even with some pieces by Rameau.
I was
I,
going to say
I,
that,
I
yeah.
also have that problem.
Yeah.
And another sort of repertoire which is often, not always, but very often very difficult to put on the piano. It's perhaps you have heard of the Fitzwilliam Virginal book, one of the early from high Baroque time, so even before Bach, selection of harpsichord pieces from Great Britain. So they are not using a normal harpsichord, but the virginal, and the virginal is much smaller and the sound even lighter. And they had a very sophisticated way of fingering. So at this time they might play a scale with 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, 2-3, 2-3. You can reproduce that sort of fingering on the piano. You can technically, but most of the time it will sound very strange. Whereas on that super light virginal, this gives a wonderful little sort of phrasing. So that's so highly idiomatic for the harpsichord. I haven't found so far a good substitute for that sort of phrasing, which is so eminent for that music, to reproduce it on a
Modern
concert
piano,
grand, you know. So that's why I say, in terms of translating that music on the piano, there is a reason for me why mostly that sort of late Baroque pieces by Bach, Handel, and so on, and some Rameau, is performed on the piano rather than earlier pieces or even that Fitzwilliam virginal book. I mean, there are some pieces you can do, and I think in that case Glenn Gould should be huge example for us. His Sveling and Bird and whatsoever recordings are among his most fascinating ones, where he is much less crazy than in his Bach performances, actually, with much less mannerisms. But apart from these few examples, most pieces are quite difficult to translate to the piano.
The piano, yeah. Wow, nice. Yeah, very, very interesting, because I did work on some pieces by Rameau, indeed, and I did feel the same feeling, that some timing, breathing, even the arpeggios, you could not really reproduce on the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this French Baroque is really very, very idiomatic, much more idiomatic for the harpsichord than actually the pieces by what we today consider the greatest Baroque masters of the keyboard, like Scarlatti, maybe Soler, and then Handel, Bach's son, and so on. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why we don't hear that much Rameau, Couperin, etc. on the piano. I mean, the Rameau can often be done very nicely on the piano, but as I say, Couperin and stuff like that, Lully, hard stuff on the piano.
So there are some pieces written in the Baroque era that are especially indeed written only for harpsichord, and it's very difficult to translate it on the piano. But that was about the Baroque music. I have one more question for you. That's very interesting, because yesterday you gave a lecture recital, and you also played contemporary pieces on the harpsichord, written especially for harpsichord. Could you please tell us about that? Why do they still write for harpsichord?
I'm quite sure it's because of the specific sound quality of the instrument. So there is no other instrument which could represent a harpsichord, that sort of silver-lined, plugged sort of sound. There is no substitute for it, you know. Sorry, Steinway. But you know, this can't be really reproduced with any other instrument. And a good harpsichord, a high-quality harpsichord, has a huge variety of possibilities with all these registers and manual couplings and so on you can do. There is quite a large variety of of dynamics you can achieve. And I can really understand that this inspires composers to write for this instrument. And it's not even such a new thing. I mean, it all started with actually a pianist, Wanda Landowska, a Polish pianist living in most of her time in Paris, actually, and a very eminent teacher, most famous one probably being Alexis Weissenberg, being her student. And she was the first one to get a harpsichord. So what she got as a harpsichord was basically sort of a piano with a harpsichord action in it. And they were huge things and very heavy touch and honestly quite awful to play, but with quite a fascinating sound. And thanks to her, there was a first revival of the harpsichord in the early 20th century. So if I'm talking about Francis Poulenc harpsichord concerto, then there is Jean Francais, and who wrote another concertino for harpsichord and orchestra, and also a lovely set of solo pieces called Insectarium, showing certain insects and their insects and their characters, like the scarabaeus and all that stuff, bumbling around. And it's fascinating music. So he wrote that, and Darius Milhaud also wrote that. So it works hand in hand. Of course, it was a time of neo-baroque, all these composers. But so this old style sound of the harpsichord suited their needs, but still it was really fresh music. And if you listen to that today, it still sounds fresh. I mean, it's not just a mere imitation of some baroque forms, at least not with these really great artists. And then a second very eminent composer of the later part of the 20th century was then György Ligeti. And this is basically thanks to a very rich elderly lady from Switzerland in Basel, Miss Fischer, with V. Fischer with V. Normally it's with an F, but in that case it's with a V. Fischer, Antoinette Fischer, she was a hobby harpsichordist with lots of money, and Paul Sacher suggested, I think it was Paul Sacher, suggested to her, why don't you ask composers to write for the harpsichord? And so she also approached György Ligeti, and he gifted us the Continuum, one of the core pieces of 20th century music. And I'm not talking about just harpsichord, but it's one of the core pieces. Also so idiomatic for the harpsichord, the way he uses that, because it's basically a sort of trill tremolo, exactly notated, but changing a little bit. And so in the end you get overtones which make sounds that you have never played, actually, because of interference between the notes you have played in a very quick manner. So it's basically a very quick trill in both hands, but changing slightly. And because of that, you get some interferences, and you imagine hearing something which you are not actually playing. So you can only do that on a harpsichord. So and this of course led other composers to also try the the harpsichord. Sorry, and of course György Ligeti also gifted us a second piece for actually two more pieces for harpsichord, but a second one called Hungarian Rock, a very rhythmic piece, huge drive, a little bit reminiscent to his etudes actually. To be honest, he also turned Continuum, the first harpsichord piece, into an etude for organ. I think it's the second of his organ etudes. Very rarely played because so difficult, but when it's played, it's just mind-blowing. And because the organist is working like crazy, but the sound seems to stand still, and it's amazing. And so he gifted us two of the major harpsichord repertoire pieces, and that of course inspired more composers to write for that instrument. And I've been asking myself composers to write for the harpsichord, and I may count myself happy to have enlarged the harpsichord repertoire by quite a lot of pieces.
It's very nice. So harpsichord is not only the instrument from the past, but also the instrument that it's still alive, actually, yeah. And there are many possibilities to be had on this magnificent instrument. I hope it will inspire Steinway to make a harpsichord someday.
That would be
That will
something
be
amazing.
yeah. So Steinway, if you listen to this, please try to make a beautiful harpsichord. There is still a wide future for a harpsichord, yeah, to be played. Very nice. Thank you so much for your insight today. But I think before we close this section, I would like to give the audience also the chance to maybe ask some question to Moritz Ernst. It doesn't have to be related to harpsichord. It could be related to anything, to the piano performance, to maybe a little bit of teaching, if you don't mind, and anything. So, is there any? Yes, from Emma.
So thank you for the discussion. It was very interesting. I would like to ask about, like, if you travel like all around the world and you have like a wide range of repertoire, how do you retain like all of these pieces in your hands? Like, do you have like a sort of routine that you have to like maintain it so you don't forget it, or do you usually like just have it in your hands whenever there's a concert?
Actually, it's a good question, because this is one of the headaches I sometimes have, how to maintain my repertoire. So yes, in a way, I'm in a quite lucky position, in a way that I remember things very well. So this definitely helps. But otherwise, I really had to, at some point, I had to do two things. So I have to learn lots of repertoire, but at some point I really have a two-class society in my repertoire. So one part of the repertoire is the one I'm sure will remain in my core repertoire, and other pieces I know, okay, I have to perform them, but they are probably not going to stay. And this, so because our time is limited, and so I have to choose what is going to stay and what's probably will have to leave at some point. So the core repertoire is something I'm maintaining on a relatively regular basis, and other pieces where I think, okay, I mean, it's not a quality discussion. Sometimes it's a great piece, but it's not my piece. It's not a piece where I think, okay, I need it for the rest of my life. Maybe someone else does. So it's no offense. These pieces I will try to, if I have to play them, I would try really to have a couple of performances. Maybe not in a row, but in a certain time frame. So. Because you will get crazy when you have to learn a new piece for every concert. So basically, I try to have a mix of a core repertoire, which I'm able to play any time. Basically, call me today and I will do it tomorrow, and the other sort of repertoire, which isn't maintained to that level. But again, because I remember things quite well, I also know that even if I have to play them, I would be able to get them back in quite a reasonable time. So I try to have a mixture between the two parts of my repertoire, and also relating just on my ability to remember things. I mean, it's mostly for me. If I know I want to keep a piece for a long time, I try to take lots of time to learn it. You know, pieces you have been living with for a longer period of time just stick so much better to your brain than those you just learned in 2 afternoons. You know, so all these pieces you had to learn last minute. And let's face it, this is what happens quite often when you are concertizing professionally. So let it be a last minute call, last minute time change, program change, especially when you are dealing also with contemporary music, composers handing in their pieces late or something. You know, there is a huge array of things that can go wrong and will make you have to learn something last minute. And also, especially in the beginning of a career, you will often get like this call, okay, colleague A or B had to cancel, can you replace him? But we have to maintain at least this and this part of the concert program. And of course, usually you haven't played that piece, you know. So you just, what do? You just sit down and learn it, you know. That's your only chance. And even now, sometimes I have to do it. So last year I got a call from a TV station. Actually, we need a certain piece by Beethoven. Do you have it in your repertoire? What did I say? Did I say no? No, of course not. I said, oh yeah, sure. I've played it. And then saying yes, of course, and then, you know, just rushing, getting the score and just start practicing, you know. So it really happens quite often. But if I really know I want to keep the piece for a long time, I really try to take time and get more into the details and everything, just to get it, to internalize it much more, rather than these some short notice things. Or if sometimes you have to learn something by short notice, but you know you want to keep it, then okay, you learn it for that occasion, but after that occasion, I revisit it and again get deeper into it. And one last remark, I mean, those pieces I learned when I was between 14 and beginning of the 20s. These pieces, when you learn them properly in that age, they will stick with you forever. There is a couple of pieces I learned during that time. Goldberg variations, for in my case, some of the Beethoven sonatas, some of the Chopin etudes. You know, all that standard repertoire you would learn. You can ask me basically any time, even if I haven't performed them for like 10 years. Sometimes now, I realize I can play them tomorrow, no problem. They really just they stick so much better than all the stuff I learned after that.
Well, that explains a lot my questions during those years, you know, because indeed some pieces I practiced between those age still stick in my hands until now, and it's basically you can play it like, you know, whenever you want. But that was also a very interesting point. If you want to push yourself to practice more regularly, just say yes. Any concert offer, any exams, just and then they will it will push you to practice.
Maybe not to any. Sometimes you should be a bit selective.
Yeah.
That's hard to explain where to be selective. But yes, in general, just say yes,
Yes.
until it's a decent offer. But please say no to offers that are definitely not decent. So let's be clear about that.
Of course, we have to be realistic as well. Thank you. Are there any questions? More questions?
Hi, Mr. Ernst. I want to ask your routine during the day on your recital as a pianist or a harpsichordist. Can you share about your routine?
That
you.
routine is sometimes it's not my routine, but I'm dictated my routine by the necessities of the hall and so ever. So sometimes you really have to adapt. You know, touring it, you have to adapt to the schedules of the hall available and all that. But for me, there is something which is also during recordings for me. The sound engineers I'm working with know that by now. My second take is always the best one. So I know the second performance is always the best. So what I really try is to betray me in a bit, so that the concert is basically the second performance that day. So I always try to get through at least most of the program once before, not with all repetitions, and sometimes not every piece, but the key pieces. So if time is short, or sometimes sometimes your own energy is low because you have been traveling and all that, and you really have to keep a rest in order to be fresh in the evening. But apart from that, I will always try to get myself in a mood that the concert is the second time I play a piece. So in order to somehow get through once before the concert, it doesn't need to be very tidy, it doesn't need to be proper run through, but somehow that it was played once, so that I can tell myself, oh, that's the second performance of the day now, and so it's going to be good. It's a sort of self-betrayal in a way, but as long as it works, no problem.
So it's more psychological effect.
Oh
actually,
yes, it is.
For nice insight, we could try that sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any more questions?
Okay, so this is from your experience during your free time. What will you do for you to play a certain piece, for it to be in a for you to play in a super optimal way? So like from the notes, from the dynamics, from the tone, everything in detail. How do you practice for it to finish and for it to be very good, like super optimal?
I think the most important thing to remember is there is no optimum. You will never achieve it, and maybe if you think you have achieved an optimum, you should stop, because we always want more, and so if we think we have reached optimum, why continue? I mean, I realize sometimes you think, okay, that's the optimum I can reach right now, which I think is valid. But there is no optimum. So first of all that, and second of all, I think it was Barenboim who actually said that the recipe for a masterpiece is always a little lack of time. And he's right about that. And I can't say why, but my best performances have never been those where I felt, oh, that was optimum preparation. No idea why, but it's good to hear that other colleagues have the same problem. And I think he was totally spot on when he said it's always a little lack of time. And my best performances have not been those where I thought, okay, I have 3 weeks of preparation, and and it's a great hall and a great so. No, the best ones have been, okay, I'm prepared well, but maybe not perfectly. I think again it's psychological, because if you feel perfectly well prepared, you might get a bit reckless. That sort of adrenaline, maybe, when you still have the feeling, oh, something might be missed, might set free extra powers, something like that. It's hard to explain, but so there is no optimum, and the more you try to prepare yourself, the more you will find which still needs to be prepared. That's part of the hassle, and so just throw yourself into the performance and take the risk.
Any more questions?
I'm not a concert pianist. I don't play piano anymore. But how do you keep yourself fit, and how do you get this stamina for playing this 45-minute program? Or is it because you do it so often that because when you play emotionally, physically, it has to be all there, right? Just curious.
But I can't tell you much about it, honestly, because I mean a 45-minute recital is actually a small recital. Usually a normal recital length is 1.5 hours, something like that. So two halves of 35 to 45 minutes, something like that. So I don't do anything specific, to be honest. So
That's the secret.
just try to be well rested, and I was lucky enough to be taught a sort of technique which doesn't involve too much power, sheer power. So that also helps. But apart from that, I try to be well rested, well fed. Yeah, I have never really thought that much about it. I mean, apart from being well rested, which is quite important for me, sometimes a bit difficult when traveling, jet lag and all that. But yeah, nothing exciting I can say about that one.
But that's the secret then. Just be relaxed and well rested. I think that's very important. Yeah. Good. Now, because he also has a concert tonight, so I think he must be well rested after this.
How very true.
So I think after almost 1.5 hour, of section, I think we can close this discussion for today. And I would like to thank Moritz, Ernst, so much for your time to be able to be here, to be able to share your insights with all of us in the middle of all your activities in Jakarta. I hope you can still find some time to have a rest before your performance tonight, and we wish you great success for your performance tonight.
Thanks a lot for that, and I think we had a great time in here.
We
Hope
did.
your audience had as well. So we achieved all what we wanted, and let's hope for the concert. But yes, it will work.
So good luck for tonight, and
Thanks
I
a
would
lot.
also like to thank the audience for coming here today to have this little chat with Moritz, Ernst, and I hope what we have heard today will inspire us in our musical journey in the future. I will also thank House of Piano Jakarta and Steinway Indonesia for hosting this event, to make this event also possible for all of us. So thank you for today, and thank you all for coming to this event. I'll see you next time, and we'll see you in the concert tonight.
See you tonight.
Yeah.